1,000 years ago, your doctor might heal you with song, smoke, and a smear of herbs blessed at the altar. Dawn breaks cold over a damp hall in an Anglo-Saxon village. A single candle flickers, casting shadows on the thatch. Steam rises from a cauldron. The smell of wormwood and garlic hangs heavy in the air. The healer, the leech, as they were called, bends over a patient laid on a straw bed. Around them hang dried bundles of fennel and betony, carved amulets, and a wooden cross. A whispered charm accompanies the rubbing of salve. Was this medicine, magic, or faith? Beneath the murmur of prayers and the crackle of the fire lies a world of knowledge, observation, and tradition. Let us journey into the dark ages to meet the leeches and discover the strange arts of wortcunning. This is the Candlelight Historian, where the glow of a single flame reveals the dark corners of history. Here, belief and terror walk side by side. Every superstition, every curse, every haunted truth is another step deeper into the mind of our ancestors. The leech's world. In the 10th century, the word leech meant healer long before it named the blood-sucking worm. To be a leech was to be learned in law and practice. These men and women worked at the borders of science and superstition. In Anglo-Saxon England, healers might be freemen or slaves, monks or mothers. Some inherited their craft from kin, others learned in monasteries or from travelling teachers. Their world was one of villages ringed with hedge and ditch, timber halls perfumed with hearth smoke, and fields marked by burial mounds. Communities were small, kinship ties strong, and illness always near. Fevers, wounds, childbirth, toothache. These were everyday trials. In a time without anesthetics or antibiotics, the leech's skills meant the difference between life and death. The social role of a leech was complex. They were respected for their knowledge of herbs and ability to ease pain, yet distrusted for their dealings with unseen forces. Many were literate, able to read Latin prayers and vernacular recipes. They would consult texts like the Herbarium Apulae Platonici and the Leech Book of Bald, handwritten compendia of remedies preserved in monasteries. Some healers were monastic infirmarians, brothers or sisters charged with caring for their fellow religious. Others worked among layfolk, attending births, setting bones, or bleeding the ailing. Payment might come in coins, bread, or labour. Daily life for a healer involved more than mixing potions. They observed the seasons and studied the stars. They knew when to harvest plants, at dawn, under a waxing moon on saints' days. They performed rituals to protect against elf shot, believed to be invisible darts shot by malicious spirits causing sudden pain. They attended to livestock as well as people. In many communities, the leech also served as midwife, barber, and veterinarian. The burden was heavy. When a cure failed, blame could fall on them. Accusation of witchcraft was never far away. Worldviews in this time were layered. Germanic traditions mingled with Roman heritage and Christian doctrine. The penitentials, church manuals listing sins and penances, warned against magical practices but acknowledged the need for healing prayers. The healer thus navigated between folk custom and ecclesiastical approval. They might recite a charm while tracing the sign of the cross, blending pagan and Christian language. They might refer to illnesses as the work of worms or dwarfs, yet call upon Christ and the saints to banish them. This syncretic worldview characterized the healer's world, an intricate tapestry woven from threads of belief, observation, and experience. Words, smoke, and song. Healing began with words. In the Lacnunga, an Old English collection of charms and remedies, the power of spoken language is central. The healer would lean close to the patient, whispering incantations that combined poetic alliteration with Christian petitions. One charm against fever invokes the earth and the Trinity, weaving natural and divine imagery. The words were not mere superstition. They carried rhythm and resonance, believed to affect the unseen causes of illness. Healing songs might be repeated 9 times, a number resonant with folklore. Chanting calmed the patient, created a ritual space, and perhaps masked the pain of treatment. Smoke played its part as well. The healer might fumigate a sickbed with juniper, wormwood, or frankincense. Smoke was thought to drive away malevolent spirits and cleanse the air. The Leech book recommends burning marshmallow root to ease coughs, or smoking out worms causing bellyache. In homes where the hearth smoke already curled around rafters, added fumes created a heady atmosphere. In monastic infirmaries, incense burned before relics, its scent mixing with the musky smell of herbs. The boundary between sacred and medicinal was porous. A cloud of smoke could be prayer and poultice at once. Song accompanied not only charms but also practical procedures. During trepanation, the drilling of a hole into the skull to relieve pressure, the patient might be distracted by singing. When drawing blood with a lancet or biting leech, the healer might hum to steady their hands. The cadence of work songs carried into the sick room. Song also helped remember lengthy recipes. In a culture of oral transmission, mnemonics were essential. Verses encoded lists of ingredients, dosages, and steps. Rhythm turned knowledge into memory. This ritual of healing engaged senses beyond sight and touch. The healer's breath was sacred. In some charms, the healer would blow upon the herbs or into the patient's mouth to transmit healing virtue. Breath, the life force, was believed to carry power. Blowing 3 times invoked the Trinity. Blowing 9 times echoed pagan numerology. The patient might drink water into which a charm was uttered. Thus words, smoke, and song intertwined, binding body and spirit in the act of healing. Herbs and hidden virtues. Underpinning the healer's art was a deep knowledge of plants. The term WORTCUNNING refers to the wisdom of worts, plants, and herbs. Many Anglo-Saxon remedies rely on native flora, harvested at specific times and prepared with care. The Leech Book of Bald, dated to the 10th century, lists hundreds of herbs and their uses. Comfrey, known as knitbone, was applied to fractures. Its mucilaginous root helped bind tissues. Betony, a plant with serrated leaves, was valued for headaches and spirits' affliction. Foxglove, though poisonous, was used in minute amounts to slow a weak heart. Wormwood and tansy expelled worms from the belly. Meadowsweet eased pain. Yarrow staunched bleeding. The healer learned to recognize plants by their look, smell, and habitat. Behind each herb lay a story. Many were associated with saints or pagan deities. St. John's wort, with its star-shaped yellow flowers, was gathered on the feast of St. John and hung over doorways to ward off evil. Mugwort, called muckwort in Old English, was tied around travellers' feet to prevent fatigue. The doctrine of signatures suggested that a plant's appearance indicated its healing virtue. Lungwort's spotted leaves resembled diseased lungs, and so was used for coughs. While modern science might dismiss such associations, some align with genuine pharmacological properties. For example, willow bark, rich in salicylates, served as an early pain reliever. Preparation was an art. Herbs could be dried, powdered, infused, decocted, or made into poultices. Ointments were mixed with animal fats or beeswax. Wine, ale, and honey served as solvents. The Leech Book prescribes boiling betony in milk for eye troubles, honey mixed with fennel juice for sore throats, and nettle seed ground with hemp for spleen ailments. The healer had to judge dosages by experience. Without measurement devices, they relied on pennyweight lumps, spoonfuls, or the length of a man's thumb. Overdose could be deadly, underdose useless. Timing mattered. Herbs picked at midsummer were thought to have more power. Some plants carried warnings. Henbane, nightshade, and hemlock were known to be poisonous but employed cautiously. The Leech Book advises using henbane seeds as a sleep aid, a risky practice. Garlic and onion, more benign, were used liberally. Garlic was believed to strengthen the heart and cleanse the blood. It also had antimicrobial properties. Onion poultices drew out infection. Elderberry syrup eased colds. These remedies, derived from observation and tradition, reveal a sophisticated empirical knowledge. The healer's confidence came not only from law, but from results. Even where the reasoning was steeped in symbolism, the practice often had efficacy. Odd remedies and dangerous faith. Some cures provoke wonder and horror. The border between medicine and magic allowed for odd ingredients. The Lacnunga includes a charm against a sudden stab pain, elf shot, instructing the healer to fetch a knife that has never cut iron, carve a piece of wood and smear it with butter and unknown herbs, then press it to the wound while reciting a prayer. Another remedy for epilepsy involves drinking a potion made from the gall of a wolf mixed with wine. In the Leech Book, to cure a swelling, the leech must catch a live mole, cut it open, place it on the swelling, and bury both mole and patient's nail clippings at a crossroads. Such rituals linked illness to sympathetic magic. By transferring the ailment to an animal or burying it, the patient is relieved. Bloodletting was a common, dangerous practice. The theory, derived from ancient Greek humoral medicine, held that the body contained 4 humors: blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile, whose imbalance caused disease. Removing excess blood could restore harmony. Anglo-Saxon healers, influenced by Latin texts, bled patients from veins corresponding to their ailments. Fever. Cut the basilic vein in the arm. Headache. Let blood from a vein in the foot. Timing was crucial. Some sources advise bleeding on specific days of the moon or saints' days. Bleeding could weaken an already ill person. Still, the practice persisted into later centuries. Animal parts entered prescriptions. Ox gull, hare's brain, hartshorn, and goat dung were ingredients. For toothache, the Leech Book suggests burning a mixture of goat dung and henbane seeds, directing the smoke into the mouth. Burnt hedgehog skin mixed with vinegar and honey served as a salve. Marrow from a deer's leg, wrapped in a cloth and tied to the patient's arm, was believed to ease fever. These substances carried symbolic weight: the strength of a stag, the cleverness of a hedgehog, and perhaps some biochemical effect. For instance, animal fats acted as carriers for plant essences. Horn and bone contained minerals. Nevertheless, modern minds recoil at such concoctions. Faith played a dangerous role when relics and intercession supplanted reason. The faithful might attribute illness to divine punishment and seek miracle cures rather than earthly treatment. Pilgrims travelled to holy sites, such as the shrine of St. Cuthbert at Durham, to seek healing. Relics of saints believed to channel divine power were applied to wounds. While spiritual comfort could aid recovery, reliance on miracles delayed seeking practical help. Conversely, church authorities sometimes condemned traditional cures as pagan. In the penitentials, confessors forbade charms not invoking Christ. This tension forced healers to disguise old practices under Christian forms. Dangerous faith thus lay in extremes, either ignoring physical remedies for prayer alone or using charms in ways deemed heretical. From pagan to Christian. The conversion of Britain to Christianity did not erase older healing traditions. Rather, it reframed them. Missionaries arriving in the 7th century encountered communities steeped in Germanic and Celtic beliefs. The Church sought to channel practices into acceptable forms rather than abolish them outright. The Leech Book demonstrates this accommodation. It includes recipes that begin with "on Christ's name" and end with "Amen," yet retain pagan elements. One charm for a skin disease instructs the healer to write the names of the 4 evangelists on the patient's 4 limbs, blend herbs with holy water, and recite a charm referencing Woden and other pre-Christian deities. The scribe then adds, "Nevertheless, we must convert this to Christian use." The text shows the tension between faith and tradition. Monasteries became centres of healing. In Northumbria, communities like Lindisfarne and Wearmouth Jarrow housed infirmaries where monks copied medical texts and cultivated herb gardens. Bede, the 8th century scholar, wrote about miraculous cures and the virtues of certain plants. He described Bishop John of Beverley placing hands on the head of a dumb boy and teaching him to speak, blending pastoral care with healing. Monks such as Theodore of Tarsus brought knowledge from the Mediterranean, including humoral theory and surgical techniques. The Benedictine rule mandated care of the sick. Monasteries developed herbariums and physic gardens. Old English glosses on Latin herbals show translation and adaptation to local flora. At the same time, folk healers continued to practice in villages. Syncretism flourished. The same charm that invoked pagan spirits could now call upon St. Mary or St. Peter. The protective ring, once carved with runes, now bore Christian symbols. The Church occasionally issued condemnations. The Council of Trullo in the 7th century forbade Christians from consulting diviners. Penitentials specified penances for reciting incantations not mentioning the Trinity. Yet enforcement was uneven. The Christian blessing of herbs at church festivals merged with midsummer plant gathering rites. The Catholic feast of Candlemas in February involved lighting candles to ward off evil, a practice likely rooted in pagan midwinter rituals. Thus, healing in early medieval Britain was a tapestry woven with pagan and Christian threads, each reinforcing the other's patterns. Islands of healing. The British Isles were not monolithic. Healing practices varied across regions, shaped by geography, culture, and belief. In Anglo-Saxon England, medical texts like the Leech Book of Bald and the Lacnunga provide direct evidence of remedies. In Wales, healing drew on Celtic herbal lore and the authority of bards. Manuscripts such as the Medica de Viribus Herbarum list herbs with Welsh names and uses. Holy wells, associated with saints like St. Winifred and St. Dyfnog, served as pilgrimage sites. People bathed in their waters and drank them to cure ailments. The boundary between sacred and medicinal blurred. In Ireland, a rich oral tradition of healing survived alongside Christian monasticism. Druidic law influenced healing practices. Brehon laws prescribed compensation for injuries and described the status of medical practitioners. The Herbarium of O. Quinn, compiled in the 14th century but drawing on earlier sources, shows the continuity of herbal knowledge. Irish healers used plants like eyebright, bog bean, and St. John's wort. They also practiced word-cunning, the skill of using words to heal. Charms in Old Irish and Latin blended Christian prayers with ancient formulae. The island's isolation preserved some pre-Christian practices longer than elsewhere. Scotland exhibited Gaelic and Pictish influences. Highland folk medicine relied on moorland herbs and seaweed. The Cailleach, a goddess or spirit of the mountains, featured in healing lore. Offerings were made to her for health. The Gaelic word leheas signified healing, while eolas meant knowledge or charm. Traditional healers used incantations called ora chad and luid eagan, along with herbs. The Carmina Gadelica, a 19th century collection of Gaelic prayers, preserves much older healing charms invoking Christ, Saint Bride, and elemental forces. Island communities such as those in the Hebrides developed unique remedies using kelp, shellfish, and bird feathers. Closer to Norse influence, Orkney and Shetland combined Scandinavian magic with Celtic and Christian elements. Monastic infirmaries across the island served as hubs of knowledge. In Chester and Winchester, monasteries maintained physic gardens growing sage, rue, lovage, and rosemary. The Old English herbarium lists plants known to be cultivated. In Iona, the Irish monk Columba was remembered as a healer. His relics were believed to cure disease. In the Welsh monastery of Llanthony, medicinal springs attracted pilgrims. Throughout the islands, the interplay between local tradition and imported knowledge created diverse healing landscapes. Though the Malthusian disasters of famine and plague were yet to come, these communities developed ways to cope with disease using their environment. Between science and magic. To modern eyes, the medicine of the Dark Ages seems a tangle of superstition and rudimentary science, yet it deserves reflection. Early medieval healers worked without microscopes or laboratories. They observed cause and effect, noting which herbs relieved pain, which foods worsened fever, which wounds suppurated. Through trial and error, they catalogued the properties of plants. They understood that honey cleansed wounds and that willow bark eased pain. They set fractures, sutured wounds, and even performed trepanation. Their success rates may have been modest, but their intentions were earnest. At the same time, their worldview embraced forces we now regard as mythical. They believed in elves causing sharp pains, dwarfs causing nightmare, and worms gnawing from within. Spirits dwelled in trees and streams, stars influenced health, words held power, charms were as essential as ointments. This blending of observation and belief reflects the human need to find meaning and hope in suffering. When remedies failed, people turned to faith. When prayer alone failed, they turned to plants. This world invites us to reconsider what constitutes medicine. Healing is not merely the application of chemicals, it is a relationship between healer and patient, framed by culture. The ritual of kneeling at a sickbed and reciting a charm could comfort and calm. Smoke cleansing might have reduced infection. Prayer could strengthen resolve. The leech's presence, knowledge, and empathy mattered. The line between placebo and cure is blurred by perception. Early medieval medicine shows that belief can be part of healing. There is also a cautionary tale. Dangerous remedies, such as bloodletting or the use of toxic plants, remind us how human knowledge can harm when untested. The condemnation of certain practices as pagan or heretical reveals how authority can suppress knowledge. Conversely, the survival of effective remedies through oral tradition demonstrates resilience. Many herbs used by early medieval healers are recognized today for their medicinal properties. Foxglove gave rise to digitalis, willow bark, to aspirin. Such continuity suggests a thread between the healer's world and ours. In reflecting on early medieval medicine, we see a mirror. Our own age holds on to rituals and beliefs alongside science. We might place faith in technology or in mindfulness. We may take pharmaceuticals and practice yoga, get vaccinated and wear crystals. Each era weaves its own tapestry of healing. The Dark Ages were not so dark as often portrayed. They shimmer with the light of knowledge and the glow of candles illuminating human care. Thank you for joining the Candlelight Historian. If this story spoke to you, leave a light in the dark. A like, a comment, a thought for the old fears that once kept our ancestors awake. Until next time, keep the candle burning.